panelists who have joined us today as well. Welcome to the Restore Community webinar. So the Restore Community webinars have a very clear goal of helping to connect the members of the Restore community, helping them to share their knowledge and the hard-learned lessons with one another, helping them to connect with one another and find collaboration opportunities. Specifically, the topic for today's webinar is about funding ecosystem restoration, insights from funders and project implementers. We know at Restore, because the Restore community have told us, that getting access to funding is one of the key challenges that you face in your work to restore ecosystems. And Restore is very much committed to doing what we can do to support you with overcoming this challenge. And this webinar today is one small example of the ways in which we want to help. But we're also working on a set of new features and functionalities that will support projects with finding funders and funding opportunities, and also support funders with finding high quality and high potential projects. So, and I will make sure that we find some time at the end of this webinar to look at those as well. We're completely oversubscribed for this webinar today. So we've had more than 1,200 members of the Restore community sign up to attend this webinar. So great that for those of you who are joining us on Zoom, and to everybody else on YouTube Live, welcome. I see some of you have already started. Yes, please introduce yourself using the chat function on Zoom and in YouTube Live. I've got a fantastic Restore team here today to help us out with welcoming you all and answering your questions. Mick Dos Santos and Himabat from the Restore team will be moderating the chat on YouTube Live and answering your questions there. And in the Zoom room, we have Iman Shihab, who's Restore's user support lead. We have Marina Duarte, who's the regional engagement lead for Brazil. Anissa Satvika, who's the regional engagement lead for Indonesia. And myself, I'm Stephanie Feeney. I'm head of partnerships at Restore, and I have the honor of moderating this chat today and working with the Restore team to make it a nice, smooth experience for everyone. So we're going to start and try and get a sense of who's in the room. So I'm going to pass the baton now to my colleague Marina, who's going to help us to go through some polls and so that we can get a sense of who's here in the room today. Over to you, Marina.
Hello, everyone. This first poll is for us to better get to know each other. There are two questions. The first one is about your role in restoration and conservation. And the second one is about your main challenges regarding funding. So you can see the poll there. There are two questions. We'll leave 2 minutes for them, one for each question. Please scroll down to see the second question. And yeah, please feel free to start. And after we finish it, I will share the results with you.
Thanks, Marina. Let's give everyone a short time to do that. And for those who are on YouTube Live and can't actively participate in the poll, please leave your comments in the YouTube Live chat function and just say who you are and mention what your key challenges are there as well. So what do you think, Marina? Are we ready to share results?
We're leaving 2 minutes for the poll. We still have 1 minute. I already see the results. We have many roles, many different roles, but the majority of them are project implementers. I will share the graphs in a minute.
Yeah. Okay, great. And so while everyone is waiting to see the results, please just carry on and introduce yourself in the chat. Once we've got the poll results, we will actually go into a sort of a quick fire breakout room session, because Restore community webinars wouldn't be community webinars without the chance to connect on a more personal level with a small group. We know that this is a sort of favorite feature of a community webinar, so you'll have time to get to know people a little bit better in the breakout rooms as well.
Okay, I'm ending the poll right now,
and
I'm sharing the results with you. As you see, most part of people here are project implementers, but we have different roles in the restoration and conservation chain here. And also your challengers are very diverse, and I hope we can have a good conversation about that today. And again, to you, Stephanie.
Great, super. Thank you, Marina. Okay, that's great. Gives us a sense of who we've got in the room, mostly project implementers, but others as well. So I'll make sure to try and tailor my content and my comments for that. Okay, so let's go to the breakout rooms very quickly. A quick fire round. Marina, we're putting about 5 people into each breakout room. Is that right?
Yeah, it is. Anissa is going
super.
to set up the breakout rooms.
Great. So we've got 5 minutes. There will be 4 to 6 people, let's say, in a breakout room. So please take 1 minute per person to just say who you are, what you're working on, and what's your current funding challenge or your sort of current funding top tip. So off you go. Let's take 5 minutes to connect on a more personal level.
In the meantime, as for live streaming on YouTube, I will just share in the main room a video with you, just for the ones who are watching from YouTube, that they can watch something here.
That's great. Thanks, Marina.
You're welcome.
Aloha mai kako. I'm coming to you from Hawaii Island, home to Terraformation's headquarters. My name is Brian Tucker. I'm a GIS specialist at Terraformation, and I'm here to talk to you about our user experience with the Restore platform. Terraformation and Restore share a lot of common goals and interests in our pursuit of a healthier planet. We share a mutual focus for helping early-stage forest creators, which makes us a natural fit for working together to increase visibility for restoration projects across the globe. In particular, we both genuinely want to help all forest creators map and publish their sites to become more visible to funders. So how do we get there? I was tasked with creating our Terraformation profile to best utilize this tool. So here's what you find when logging in. There's a lot going on, as you can see. So explore, get familiar with what's going on around the world. Then get in touch with the Restore team. They are so knowledgeable and so passionate. They've been a great pleasure to work with and so helpful as we get set up. And then you'll create an organizational profile. I'm gonna switch screens here. In a second. There we go. So here's our profile, and I'm just going to briefly highlight a few of our favorite features that we are developing. So as you can see, you have your organizational information, all your contacts. You know, this overview screen, you know, lists everything, and you can go deeply into each one, or you can use the tab. I'm going to use the tabs here. So sites, they are the heart and soul of what we're all doing. You know, here we can see our internally managed sites and sites of those that we are partnering with others to implement. So, you know, every site contains quite a bit of information, and the one feature I want to highlight here is, in this example, is this is a site that we're partnering with Humans for Abundance and managing. And so, as you can see, you know, a lot of information. And now we can go into the organizational relationships at the site level. So you can click on the collaboration tab. You can see Humans for Abundance, Terraformation. We're working together, and we know that when we work together, you know, we create a stronger project that's more likely to succeed. So that's really cool to be able to show that with sites. And then points of interest are such a great new feature. You know, being able to highlight all of the important factors that facilitate project success, like seed banks and nurseries. You know, they're crucial. And so by developing this network, you know, we can see where these points of interest are located and how they might help you know, your projects. And then collections are really, really interesting, and they can be used for a number of purposes. So I'm using them to organize sites by partnerships. You know, you can make like a playlist of your favorite sites, you know, across the world. But you know, as you can see here, we're still in the early stages. You know, we have quite a few more partners than this, but you know, there's a process to working together to get them onto the Restore platform and so forth. And you know, the Restore team will help you optimize your experience. And so, you know, where do we grow from here? You know, we're going to connect our current partners by introducing them to Restore and working with them to get their organizational profiles and their sites on board, and then getting us connected together. And then sourcing new partners, you know, encouraging our applicants to join, finding new partners as we explore the site. So this really promotes participation. And then, of course, building a shared capacity to encourage this collaboration between organizations and projects. And so, you know, this is a very good tool for our purposes and probably for yours too. So thank you very much. If you have any questions about the user experience, feel free to reach out, but also the Restore team is fantastic. Aloha.
So
They will be back in around 60 seconds
that's
automatically.
right. We're on a countdown. People will be returning into the main room very soon. So that's great. Nice to see some of the introductions in the chat, really interesting. And I hope that those of you who are coming back from the breakout rooms got a chance to meet some interesting peers and exchange some good tips and share your challenges. So breakout rooms are closing. So once we have everybody back in the main room, I'll introduce the panel. Right, so I think everyone is back, Anissa, is that right?
Yes.
Super, okay, great. Then welcome back, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed that short breakout room and you got to meet some interesting people and exchange some ideas and challenges. We're going to move now to the next part of the webinar, which is the panel discussion. So we have allocated about 40 minutes to this, so that it's including the inputs from the panelists, but also time for Q&A as well. We'll hear from the panelists first, sort of one by one, and then we'll go to questions and answers. The panel is structured so that we have a mix of funders and project implementers, because we think it's really interesting to hear sort of both perspectives and get insider tips and tricks from, let's say, both sides of the challenge. In terms of questions, we've actually already been overwhelmed with questions because we reached out to ask if people had questions in advance to inform the panelists as they thought about what they wanted to share with us. We won't be able to answer everything, but we'll do our best to answer as many as possible of the most sort of pertinent and urgent questions. And so feel free to add your questions to the chat, and Iman will be moderating there, and she will select a couple of of questions for us to pose to the panel at the end. And that's the same for anyone on YouTube Live. Please put your questions in the comments, and we'll aim to pick out one or two of those to respond to as well. Okay, so first of all, welcome to the panelists. I'm really excited about this part of the webinar. We have four great folk who are joining us today who are open to sort of sharing their insider tips and tricks with us. We have Nelly Kadagi from WWF. Nelly is the Director of Conservation Leadership at WWF, and she also directs the Education for Nature program, which is a grant-making operation of the Russell E. Train Education for Nature program. So welcome, Nelly. Thank you for joining us. We also have Peter Lesniak from Terraformation. Peter is Forestry Partnerships Lead for Africa for Terraformation. And in his role, he connects with forestry organizations in Africa to build a pipeline of future reforestation projects that are suitable for Terraformation's accelerator program. It's called the Seed to Carbon Forest Accelerator Program, which includes support in financial and both capacity building support. Welcome, Peter. Thank you for joining us. We also have Mbaraak Abdalla from Camp Mombasa Mangrove Forest and from the Brain Youth Group. He's the founder and program director at those organizations. Camp Mombasa Mangroves was established in 2011, and it's a really ambitious project to restore 1,500 hectares of mangrove forests along the Tudor Creek in Kenya, and involves a lot of community participation. So Mbaraak, thank you for joining us, and we're excited to hear from you. And finally, we also have Alexis Bastos from Rioterra. Alexis is project coordinator at Rioterra, which is a study center in Brazil. It's a center that's in existence for over 25 years and works on socio-environmental development and territorial management in the Amazon. So both Nelly and Peter are representing the funder perspective, let's say, in the webinar today, and Mbaraak and Alexis are here as project implementers and as grantees, and we'll be able to hear their perspective as well. Nelly, I'd like to start with you if I can, and I'd like to just get straight into the sort of questions. The Education for Nature program is a grant-making program. You offer grants, funding of up to $15,000 for projects, and it also includes capacity building and sort of collaboration nurturing as part of the program as well. But specifically, you must have seen so many funding applications in the last years. What would you say are the most common mistakes or mistakes that grantees make when they're applying for a grant?
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie. And I must say that every year I have a privilege of reading between 500 to 800 applications for projects and individuals looking for funding. And when I hear your question, I want to change it a little bit and call it missed opportunities, not really mistakes. And I'll go straight to 4 points that I would like to highlight. The first one is the credibility of the applicant's work. One of the biggest missed opportunity is when applicants do not put the credibility of their work on paper. Mm-hmm. I understand you're looking for money, but at the same time, you're an expert in the area that you are operating in. And so when I'm reading your application, I'm looking to identify with your story and not necessarily the prize at the end of the journey you're walking. The second one is authenticity. Funders put out guidelines with different parameters or thematic areas that we are funding. But at the end of the day, you're the one that's doing the work. And so the question has always been, how do you understand this work so that you can be authentic in what you're presenting and not necessarily to fit yourself into what the funder is looking for? Because it's very easy to tell when someone has taken a proposal and tailored it to what the funder is asking for. But really what we are looking for in these applications is authenticity. The third one is partnership. The world of conservation funding and in general is pivoting, whereby funders are looking to partner with implementers. And so it's not the business of, I need money, help me with money to do XYZ. I am sitting here reading 500 applications to see whom can we partner with to deliver the conservation action we are looking for. And so it is that missed opportunity where the relationship aspect is put out of consideration, and it's only I'm looking for money to do my thing. So again, that's another. And then the last one is communicating the impact of your work. That's also another missed opportunity whereby you read a proposal and it's dry. You look up the applicants, you realize that they've done a lot of work, but this is not communicated neither on the application nor in other places where you can find them, because the process is not just reading that application that is in front of me. I'm also looking to see how else can you stand out among the 1,000 applicants that we are reading. So those pretty much are my 4 areas that I can say are missed opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelly. That feels like it's absolutely spot on. And I appreciate you sharing and condensing your insights from all of those years of reviewing applications down into those 4 very interesting things. Can I pick up on the partnerships piece? Because I think that's super interesting that you say, you know, the space is pivoting. What for you makes a successful and potentially sort of long-term relationship or partnership between you and your grantees?
I would put it simply, communication.
Mm-hmm.
It's a two-way traffic. Normally, you know, I've also been a recipient of many grants when I was starting on my conservation journey. And one of the things I really liked was updating the funder even before they asked me for a technical report. Just that little bit piece of information that you've been able to succeed or fail. I mean, we are just not looking for success. We are also looking for failure so that we can build on those learning outcomes to be able to make changes. And so the biggest for me is communicate your work, not necessarily to tire yourself, to make it difficult for yourself. But at the end of the day, remember that the person who's signing off your money is a human being who is relating to this work, not necessarily from making sure that the boxes on the accounting are well ticked, but to make sure that the little money that we are putting in this big bucket of what is needed to fund this work is doing something to the long term. Yeah.
Amazing. Super. Thank you, Nelly. I appreciate that. Really clear and spot on. Thank you for your inputs. I'm going to move to Peter Lesniak now from Terraformation. Peter, you're involved with Terraformation's Seed to Carbon Accelerator program, which provides funding and training to support forestry teams to develop carbon projects, with the aim of helping those teams to deliver a regular revenue, both for the teams themselves and for local communities. So this is a sort of I guess, an initiative that's on a very different scale to the one that Nelly has just shared her insights on, and the end goal is different. So really interested to get your perspective here as well. Very concretely, Peter, what do you seek out, or what is it that you zoom in on in terms of your forestry partner teams when you're considering their funding applications or their applications to enter the accelerator?
Thank you, Stephanie. Really glad to be here and speak on behalf of the team at Terraformation. Like you say, what we look for is quite specific. We run a seed to carbon forest accelerator, which focuses on restoration of native forest ecosystems and mangrove ecosystems in the tropical belt, in particular the moist tropical regions. I agree with all the points that Nelly has mentioned. We do have an application process. We try to make it as short as possible, but we do look for things that Nelly mentioned, the collaboration with or the willingness to collaborate with other NGOs and institutions in the region. That's very important. Also, one of the important things for us is for projects to think holistically about restoration. So although we're concerned about restoration of ecosystems, we really need to think about things like socioeconomic impact of the restoration of the restoring forest and the holistic approach. And maybe I will give an example of one successful applicant from Kenya. For the Kenyan audience, they're working on restoring a Kakamega forest, which is located in the west part of Kenya. What really got us excited about working with this partner is that they're really not just talking about restoration, but also addressing the factors of deforestation in the region. So they have, other than doing restoration, they're also working on an efficient cook stove program. They have an alternative fuel briquette facility, and they also work with smallholder farmers on helping them establish woodlots of their own, so that the effects of pressure on the natural forest is reduced. So this is what really gets us excited about working with partners, is the fact that they're thinking holistically about restoration. They're collaborating with other organizations in the space, and also for us, we are focused on native forest restoration. Biodiversity is really important for us. So those organizations who are looking at restoring native ecosystems with 20 species or more, unless it's a mangrove project, which is less biodiverse. But if we talk about terrestrial forest, then that's really exciting for us, especially if they know what they're talking about when it comes to dealing with those species. So they know how to handle those species.
Got it. And how do you, Peter, go about sourcing and finding projects? Because obviously these are projects that need to be at a certain sort of scale. And I'm asking this question because I believe that if the webinar participants today better sort of understand how you go about finding partners, they can improve their chances of sort of getting on your radar. So you do have an application process and form on your website, but what else do you do, and how do you go about finding participants for your program?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, we're very open to, there's many different ways. So I've been responsible for finding projects, and I've been scouting the internet for credible organizations doing restoration. And so one thing that people can do if they have an organization, an NGO, a social enterprise, is to have a running website that helps.
Yeah.
Be present in networks such as this one. We also have a collaboration with WRI Land Accelerator, where we've done a presentation, a training on carbon markets and what they are and how to get involved in them. So if you're involved in these kind of networks, then that helps.
Yeah.
I would say for the individual landowners or people who are looking to restore smaller plots of land, unfortunately, when it comes to carbon financing, the size of the project needs to be of a certain size for the investors to be interested, which is a bottleneck for individual landowners unless the project is on government land or communal land. And this is where the NGOs and social enterprises come in. So what typically happens is the NGO or social enterprise, they work with individual landowners and to bring those projects together. And then once the project is of a certain size, and we try to lower the barrier, but it's still around 300 hectares for us. So once the project reaches a certain size, then that NGO organization, they can work with an institution or somebody like Terraformation to help them design the carbon project and bring it to the market.
Okay, super. Thank you. That's really helpful. Let's switch perspectives now. Let me introduce Mbaraak, who's been working on mangrove ecosystem restoration since 2011. So Mbaraak, you've been doing this for 12 years now in Kenya. If I'm up to date, I understand you've already sort of taken care of 200 hectares, but you've got about 1,400 hectares still to restore. And you engaging with local communities is a sort of key part of the work that you do. So I'm going to ask you a question that I imagine is interesting for the project implementers on the call. For such an ambitious project like yours, what does your fundraising strategy look like right now? Maybe you can tell us a bit about sort of where your funding comes from, the mix. I think that would be just helpful to share.
Okay, most of the time, thank you so much for this opportunity. Most of our funding source, we depend on social media platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And since last year, I came to realize LinkedIn is more LinkedIn is better than all other platforms. So I put a lot of my effort on LinkedIn, and that's where I get a lot of connection. Even today, I had a lady from Wildlife Conservation Society, the lady from UK. She came to pay us a visit early in the morning. And when they saw what I'm posting on my platform, then they showed me a message like, "Hey Mbaraak, we have seen what you are doing in Kenya. Can we have a call and see how we can work together?" So that's how I'm interacting, or how I'm getting donors.
Amazing. Yeah.
Okay.
So making sure that you have a presence and being proactive about having that presence, I guess. Okay. So could you say a little bit, Mbaraak, about what does your donor base look like today? What sort of organizations are supporting you?
At the moment, we are working with a climate partner, and last year we planted 750,000 mangrove seedlings in 3 months, and they are into carbon, but at the moment we are just doing the reforestation first. Then later we can see how we can initiate the carbon credit, but for now it's just purely reforestation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So can we sort of benefit from your 12 years of fundraising experience, and maybe you can share with us the key lessons that you've learned about fundraising over the last few years?
You mean the key strategies I'm using to
get, or maybe the lessons that you learned, the challenges that you were able to overcome. What are the sort of your top tips that you would be willing to share?
Okay, I would like to say or to tell my fellow project implementers to put a lot of their time on social media platform. Let me say, I would suggest to my fellow project implementers to preach what they are doing on the ground, rather than going on social media and then posting memes for funny. That's what I can say.
Okay, great.
Yeah, a lot of people, they have this privilege of hanging on social media, but many people or many youths, they use social media, especially in my region.
Yeah,
they're just going on social media, creating some fun stories, posting memes, only that, and then they end up blaming some people, like, oh, we don't have funding, people then they are biased, things like that. But
so
opportunity is everywhere. It depends on how you handle the opportunity.
Amazing, thank you. So being very strategic about what you post, where, and being aware of the potential of social media channels for finding funding partners.
And one thing I would also like to recommend, in my social media platform, like my Facebook account was hacked in the middle of last year, but let's talk about the LinkedIn. On my LinkedIn account, I just okay, and during the COVID days, I used to spend a lot of my time on LinkedIn, like reviewing some people's profile, like okay, I set up a target of sending friendly requests like 100 to 150 people per day. Because I was spending a lot of time at home. There was nothing to do. So I spend a lot of my time on LinkedIn reviewing some people profile. Then I send a lot of friend requests to some organizations that are doing or working on environmental conservation. So after there, then I saw a lot of people sharing my posts, reposting my post, and I started receiving a lot of friendly requests, people asking to be friends, and that's how most of the time I just invite someone who is working on environmental conservation. If someone is working like in a company like Volvo or any other company which is not dealing with conservation, I don't accept.
Okay. So okay, great. Focused and determined, and very clear on what your strategy is. Thank you, Mbaraak. I appreciate the inputs. Let's get another project implementer perspective. Welcome, Alex from Rioterra. Rioterra has been around for a long time, more than 20 years now. A civil society organization and an education research institution with a remit to propose a development model for the Amazon region that combines conservation and stability with improvement of the quality of life of local populations. Alexis, I'm interested to know, sort of given the combination of the work of Rioterra, so both sort of an educational and research aspect and on the ground work, how does that impact your fundraising strategy? So, and in particular, I'm reflecting back on the point that Nelly made at the beginning about communicating impact. Does a broad remit like this help, or does it make fundraising more difficult for Rioterra? Oh, we can't hear you, Alexis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear now?
Yes, we can now. Yes.
So sometimes more difficult because, of course, when you have more complex and holistic projects, you have more difficulties to find, for example, investors, sponsors. So sometimes it's a little bit more difficult, but
Yeah.
at the end, we try to work on it because I think that we have better results. We keep learning. For example, we have to learn with the community, so we have to be close to them. We have to do some research because, of course, we have to know what is going on well or what's not going on well. And the research, for example, for monitoring for impact and for the ESGs that all the companies today, they ask for, this is very, very important. And of course, when you keep doing this, you learn more and you can improve your activities, the cost, the efficiency of the proposals of the projects that you run, how this reflects in the proposals.
Yeah.
So it's not easy because I know sometimes there's lots of other institutions that are just pay attention on the planting, but we have this more broad overview of the processes.
Yeah, yeah. And Alexis, do you tend to therefore separate those out and seek research funding for the research part and let's say more field funding for the field part, or do you find ways to combine those together?
Sometimes all the things happen.
Yeah.
For example, now we are starting a silviculture research here. We have some carbon research going on here in the forest. Sometimes we can put everything together and we combine all the things, all the aspects. This is what we like the most, okay? To combine everything and bring for the projects. But this is difficult because, for example, this is a critic that, for example, many of the companies that are investing in reforestation, for example, they want to plant forests, but they are just planting trees because when you go and you look, you discuss with them the price, for example, they want to pay the lowest price as possible. But how can you maintain, for example, to plant forests? You have to maintain, to monitor, to keep that forest for a long time for that plantations. And most of the people, they just want to pay, for example, no, I'm paying you, I don't know, an X dollars, and I want you to make some magic and to take care of this for 30 years, or at least for 5 or 6 years. So this is difficult. This is something that we pass all the time. And for example, another example, everyone now is interested. Most of the companies, they just want a carbon projects. So, but you have the biodiversity, we have the livelihoods, quality of life that is involved in everything connected to reforestation. So this is important, okay? I think carbon is important. We have other projects with carbon, but carbon is just a tool, not the end of everything. So companies who are working with this need to think more about what they are bringing to the process, because if we don't look like this, it's just like something that is just business. And I think that everyone who's involved with this has a proposition, has other things that are important.
Right. Yeah, super. Thank you for sharing that, Alexis. And I can see in the comments that other people are reflecting on what you're saying and can identify with that. Thank you to all of you for your input so far. I'd like to ask my colleague Iman to tell us if there are any questions coming in on the chat, either on Zoom or on YouTube Live, that we want to pose to the panelists. Over to you, Iman.
We can hear you, women. Is it? I can take it. From the audience, we got that a lot of people are concerned about the long-term support they can get from funders. And I will read one question about it. How do funders assess the long-term sustainability and impact of ecosystem restoration projects before providing funding?
Okay, thank you. Nelly or Peter, would one of you like to take that question?
Peter can go first.
Trying to unmute myself. It's a great question, and thank you. And I kind of want to address also what Alexis was talking about with my answer. So we know that carbon markets are not the ideal mechanism, but they are one mechanism that can provide long-term and sustainable funding to projects and organizations on the ground. The mission of Terraformation was never actually to be a carbon project developer. Our intention was to support native forest restoration on the ground. And for those who know Terraformation, they know that we're actually a forest technology company. We develop modular seed banks and technology for tracking and monitoring. And only recently have we begun looking at the carbon market as one way of trying to secure or unlock funding to finance all of this technology and support restoration on the ground. So for us, it's still important to do native forests the right way. So again, I go back to the project in Kenya, which is planning to restore the Kakamega forest with 45 species, a lot of which are going extinct and endemic. And yes, it's expensive to do it because you're not just planting species, but actually it turns out that, you know, some species take a really long time to grow and take a lot of maintenance. And a lot of organizations, when they look at setting up carbon projects, they don't care about biodiversity, right? Another thing about carbon markets right now is that they're receiving a lot of scrutiny about there not being enough benefits being distributed within the communities. So they're looking at governance of how it is that the communities will benefit from these carbon projects. That's another huge thing. And again, it's expensive to consult everyone and to keep everyone, you know, benefiting. So it is expensive. One thing that we're trying to advocate for within Terraformation is to increase the price of carbon to be able to support the restoration of high quality biodiverse projects. But when done the right way, and this is where I answer the main question, if done the right way, these projects are 30, 40, 50-year engagement. And actually, by securing investment, it is enough by pre-selling the projects, it's called carbon futures. Before any trees get put in the ground, it's actually possible to sell carbon futures and actually finance the whole planting operation. And then after year 5, once these trees are growing and maturing, that's when those verified carbon credits start to come in, and through the sales of those, then everyone can be paid, and there can be enough revenue left over for the project developer on the ground, so the ground team, to use those revenues to channel the revenues into a community trust fund where communities come together and they decide how they want to use this money, or they can channel those revenues for other conservation work. So that's one way, or just one way. There's many ways, but that's one way of unlocking long-term sustainable financing.
Great, thank you, Peter. And maybe I'll also ask Nelly to add her perspective to this as well. Was there anything you wanted to highlight, Nelly?
Yes, and while I highlight, I also share the link to our WWF Reforestation Grant Program that opens every September, October, showing eligibility to over 30 countries. When I started talking, I realized that I didn't say that the WWF reforestation grant program aims to support community-based organizations that are doing restoration or working on restoring deforested ecosystems. And so we've been around for 13 years. The reforestation grant program has been around for 13 years. And so to answer the question on how do we ensure long-term funding sustainability, we do fund projects that are starting, so new projects, but it is also our aim to continue funding our repeat partners. If you remember in my 4 points, I said that we are constantly looking for partnerships in this application. The goal is not to see you close your door for this amazing work you're doing. Our goal as we continue to be in this partnership is to make sure that we can sustain the work. Now, having sat in both places as someone looking for funding and someone that has the privilege to support the work that our implementers are doing, I do recognize that funding is limited. But I can tell you from my experience talking to project funders, it is our goal to see you be in this business for a long time. So it's not something that we just fund a one-off and go. And I also agree with Peter here when you talk about the holistic nature. It's important not just to focus on the very thing, let's say, let's plant trees, but to also focus on the benefits that that action is leading to. And as we continue to move over the years, these benefits are becoming even more important. And so I really would like to emphasize that it is in our interest to make sure that we can sustain the projects. And shout out to Madagascar, Voke, and Black Jaguar, who are on this call as well. Those are some of our partners that we continue to work with as we grapple on the issue of sustainable funding. Thank you.
Nice, thank you both. I'm conscious of time because the conversation is so rich. We're not quite getting through as many questions as we want to. Marina, is there one more burning question that we should ask given the time that we have? What do you think?
Let me see here. There is an interesting question here. Do you incorporate payments for ecosystem services or biodiversity in your funding mechanisms?
Interesting one. Yeah. So I guess this is another question for Peter or for Nelly. Well, possibly. Peter, do you want to take that one quickly and see if we can get a response to that in the last few minutes that we have?
We don't incorporate, so we're not a grantor. We help organizations on the ground set up their own essentially businesses. But what some of these organizations are speaking of doing is using the revenues from carbon to directly pay the community members. So instead of them, cutting down a tree and getting however many dollars for that tree, they actually get paid for protecting that tree and conservation. So there's these conservation easement almost, if that's the right term to use, and that's one way that we speak about this holistic approach. That's one way that we get really excited when we see organizations with these kind of ideas of how the carbon revenues will benefit the community and contribute to conservation.
Great. And Alexis, I see you've got your hand up, so you also want to jump in. Maybe you can add to Peter's comment.
Yeah, it's just about the payment for environmental service. We incorporate this in our projects, and we do this for the smallholders. We are doing a project now. It's called Agroverde, Rioterra. It's under validation there in Rioterra. But the main point is to pay for environmental service for the smallholders, because if it's not like this, at the end, if they're not receiving, they will not do their best efforts to keep the forest there. So this is important for the smallholders because, as you know, most of the projects related to carbon are for big areas or for big holders. And with this perspective, with the grouped projects, we developed a method where we can pay for environmental service for these communities, and maybe this will be something very, very nice to scale up and replicate this in the whole Amazon in the near future. We hope that you are successful.
Great, thank you so much for that. I'm going to wrap up the panel discussion, though it feels unsatisfactory just because I know that there's so many more questions, but unfortunately not enough time. And I'm conscious that we're almost at the hour, and I'm sure many of you will need to leave the call. I mentioned at the beginning there are some things that Restore is doing also to help projects find funders and for funders to find projects. So go to the Restore platform, have a look for the funding opportunities page that we've compiled on Restore, which is a directory of currently 120 plus funding opportunities, including Nelly's program and Peter's program as well, and use that as a place to find funding opportunities that may be suitable for you. Make sure we've heard that you profile your work, so make your work as visible as possible. You can use Restore to do that. You can add a profile for your organization, for the projects that you're working on. And if you do that, you automatically appear in Restore's search directory, which I know that funders are using to look for nature projects to support and fund. We have a new advanced search feature that we released recently, which is allowing funders to really go in and search on lots of different criteria. We're getting feedback on that live, we're refining it. So if you're not present in Restore and you don't have a profile, you just won't show up on the search results. So please, please do that so that we can help to connect you to funders too. And we've got potentially some exciting partnership announcements in the pipeline where we will actually be supporting funders to receive applications from grantees through the Restore platform as a sort of a first eligibility criteria check. So stay tuned to Restore for that. A huge, huge thank you to Nelly, to Peter, to Mbaraak, and to Alexis for coming up today and sharing your best tips and tricks with us. We're hugely grateful. I hope that everybody here in the webinar and the folk who are on YouTube Live have got just a few nuggets of knowledge from that will help them to shape the next funding applications that they make and help them to be more successful. So a big, big thank you to everybody for your participation today. One last thing before we go, Marina's prepared a final poll just to ask all of our community members, what do you want the next community webinar sessions to cover? Maybe it's more funding topics, or maybe it's other topics. So please jump in and give us your feedback. And if you've any other feedback, ideas, tips, just reach out to us on the community@restore.eco web address or email address, and we'll promise to get back to you. We will share the recording of this session with you after once the webinar is finished, and we'll collect some of the key learnings into a help article and share that with you as well. So thank you, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of day. Thanks so much for participating.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Blessings to all.